My brother died from alcohol. The doctor said that if he wasn't drunk, he wouldn't have died. My dad went to pubs even more. I saw him even less. He ran away with a 15-year-old girl and he left his entire family behind because of alcohol. I stood between Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. That's where I heard the adhan for the first time. I'm thinking, wow, that is so beautiful. That is so peaceful. So the way Islam made me feel, I was like, this is the truth. Nothing in my life has given me this feeling. I've tried so many things in my life to find contentment, to find happiness, and God has given me that with Islam.
Who is Aisha Rosalie? Can you tell us briefly about your background?
Who is Aisha Rosalie? Well, I grew up in the UK. I grew up in a very poor family. My dad's side of the family were what you call like traveller gypsies. We grew up in a council house. It's like very poor housing in the UK. I grew up very tough. We were very poor. It wasn't until later in my life when I started looking into being an actress that I started actually like learning how to talk properly and learning how to present myself. And now I'm Muslim, alhamdulillah, and that's the highlight of my life.
How was your life in regards to faith? Did you have any faith before?
No. I say no because I wasn't religious. I didn't have a religion, but I had faith. In difficult moments, I would find myself talking to God. I didn't know what God was, who God is, but I would, if I was in a difficult scenario, I would be like, God, can you please help me? I probably wouldn't use the word God, but yeah, I believed in a higher power, but I never really properly thought about it. I never told anyone that I believed. I was one of those people.
What was the thing that made you question your beliefs? Was it an event or a thought? And when was it?
It was when I was in Turkey, and it was when I was in Blue Mosque, Sultan Ahmed, I think you guys call it. That's when I started really seeing into religion for the first time. I'd experienced other religions, but not to the depth that I experienced Islam. Other religions, I just kind of read about them, but Islam I experienced through feeling. From being inside the mosque, from hearing the azan, it was completely different.
What was your view of Islam back then? Did you have any prejudices?
I had lots of prejudices, but they were subconscious. I never thought of myself as an Islamophobe. I never thought I didn't like a group of people. I was always trying to be kind. I was trying to be a good person. But yeah, I did have prejudices. When I first came to Turkey, I remember my granny said to me, please don't go to a Muslim country. Please, just don't go. She thought something was going to happen to me. And when she told me, don't go, it's a Muslim country, I was like, honestly, I got scared. I definitely did have that notion. When I first visited a mosque in Turkey, I thought that people were going to tell me I can't go in. I thought that they were going to, laugh at me. They were going to stare at me in a negative way. I expected the worst when I went into a mosque for the first time.
Have you ever experienced something that led you to Islam?
I always had a bad relationship with alcohol. So when I was 8 years old, my brother died from alcohol. And the reason why it affected me so much is because obviously I was very close to him. He was my brother. But the reason why it affected me so much is because when he died, the doctor said that if he wasn't drunk, he wouldn't have died. He got drunk, he got in a fight. One punch, it took one punch, and he hit the floor, the brain hit the back of his head and he died. As soon as he hit the floor, he was dead. It was instant. But the doctor said if he wasn't drunk, he would have tensed for that punch and he wouldn't have died. That was the reason. So if he hadn't been drinking, he wouldn't have died. So I always had a problem with alcohol. And after his death, I was very young, but my family, they didn't understand the negative impacts of alcohol. They actually carried on drinking. They drank more than they used to. My dad went to pubs even more. I saw him even less. He was always at the pub. And through him going to the pub, my dad then met a 15-year-old girl who he left my mum for. He ran away with a 15-year-old girl and he left his entire family behind because of alcohol. And this is something that I always advocated for when I grew up, because my entire family split in half over the course of a year. This all happened in a year. It was me, my dad, my brother and mum. And then that was it, half was gone. I never saw my dad again. Half was gone. It was me and my mum. And I think what happened after this incident is I grew up hating alcohol. I hated parties. I couldn't attend parties. I felt really bad. But as I started getting older, probably around 20, I started thinking, oh, maybe it's not so bad. I never turned into a party freak. I never went through that. For me, it was about networking. Everyone said, if you go to these clubs, you'll meet the right people, you'll get in the right circles, you'll network. So I started doing it for that reason. There was one time when I was in LA, I went to a nightclub and somebody spiked my drink. And that same night, I ended up in hospital because somebody tried to kidnap me, pretty much. Someone tried to kidnap me while I was in LA. And after that moment, I remember waking up in the hospital. I had makeup all down my face. I was in an awful state. And I remember thinking, why did I do this to myself? Like, I've always been against alcohol. Why have I started getting in this life? But the worst part was, after that, I didn't stop. I carried on partying, not as much as my friends, a little bit here and there. And when I came to Turkey with bad intentions. I didn't have good intentions when I came here. So Allah really waited until I'd lost my whole self, pretty much, to the extent that I was looking for plastic surgery. I was actually trying to change myself. Allah waited until I lost my whole self, until Allah took me to Islam.
What impressed you the most about Islam?
I mean, there wasn't one thing. There was lots of different things that happened over time. I think for me, the biggest thing that actually got me thinking about Islam seriously was when I did tasbih for the first time. So when I saw people in Turkey doing tasbih, I saw so many people doing it. I thought they were stress beads. That's what I used to call them. I used to call my mum. I'd be like, people in Turkey, they do stress beads. It's so cool, mum. So when I actually Googled for the first time what you're supposed to say when you do it, and I learned about Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, and I learned the meaning of these words, and I started doing it for the first time, there was another moment on top of that that was really special. And that was the moment that happened after I did tasbih for the first time. And that was the moment when I was coming out of the mosque, Blue Mosque here in Istanbul. And I stood between Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. That's where I heard the adhan for the first time. I mean, I'd heard it before, but this is when I really heard it. I actually stopped and listened to the adhan. Because when you're standing between those two mosques, it's so loud. The adhan is so loud. And I remember standing there and just hearing the adhan and thinking, wow, that is so beautiful. That is so peaceful. And I remember in that moment, I had an hour journey back to my hostel. I had to walk an hour back to my hostel. I didn't know the way. I was thinking to myself, okay, I need to go back to my hostel. How do I get there? So I got my phone out. I was ready to Google Map. And then my phone that was on 50% battery just died. And I remember feeling really anxious. I was thinking, how am I going to get back to my hostel? I'm in a foreign country. I don't know where to go. And I was panicking and the adhan was still playing. And then all of a sudden, it was like all my worries just dropped. It was like everything just disappeared and my anxiety left my body. And I thought, God, if you're real, this is kind of what's going through my mind. God, if you're real, help me get back to my hostel. And in that moment, in a very, 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 very long time, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't worried. Before I became Muslim, I think I spent a lot of my time being worried. Everything worried me. I had such bad anxiety. What if I go in the street and this thing happens? What if I do this and this happens? And then once I discovered Islam, once I became Muslim, it was the remedy to my anxiety. It was the thing that I'd been searching for so long to stop me from feeling anxious all the time and worried all the time, because I learned tawakkul. I learned about having faith in God, about having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That feeling was what actually drew me to Islam.
How did you find your hostel?
Subhanallah, I just walked straight to my hostel. I didn't take a single wrong turn. I don't know how I did it. It was all by the grace of Allah. But I walked from Blue Mosque straight to my hostel with no intervention, no help. Nobody helped me. And I was calm the entire time. There was not one moment where I thought, I've taken a wrong turn. I don't know where to go. Subhanallah, it wasn't me. It was Allah that got me back to my hostel.
What happened between those two moments, that hearing the adhan for the first time, taking the shahada?
My first experience inside Blue Mosque. After that, I went back to the hostel and I started reading the Quran. There was an English translation inside my hostel. So I picked that up and I started reading. And I read probably around 5 pages of Surah Baqarah. I was just reading. And I remember I took pictures on my phone of any ayats I found interesting. And after that, I just kept learning. I kept reading the Quran. I had no intention to become Muslim, but I kept doing these things just because I was interested. Something sparked my interest. I wanted to know what was going on. I come back to UK. I carried on learning. As soon as I come back to UK, lockdown happened within the week that I came back, which, subhanallah, was completely Allah's plan, because if that hadn't have happened, what easily would have happened is I would have come back to UK, I would have gone back onto a film set and that's it. You know, when you're working in film, it's like you go in the morning, you go, in the evening you come back, there's no life. But subhanAllah, lockdown happened, and lockdown forced me in my house with my phone, with my computer, with my books. And I read, and I just read, I learned, I watched lectures. I did it all at home. I didn't know any Muslims. I was by myself for the entire journey. And I still wasn't planning on becoming Muslim. What really sparked it for me was when I actually started praying. I thought, I'm going to try this, because like I said, I was really into self-help. And I thought, if someone can get up for Fajr, like that makes them have amazing self-control. So that's what I started doing. I started using praying to help me gain control over my days, to help me structure my days. And by doing that, my days were becoming so much more productive, because I would plan between Fajr and Zuhr, I would do this, this, and this. And between every prayer, I planned all these things. And I was being so productive with this schedule. I couldn't believe it. I loved it. I was like, this is awesome. Islam is awesome. People who pray 5 times a day, it's so cool because you can do so much with your day. So I was doing that. And then Ramadan came. And I was like, I'm going to really try and get self-control. I'm going to try Ramadan. My mum did not want me to. Like, she honestly thought I was going to die. She said, you cannot do this, you will die. She was so mad at me for trying. So I was doing Ramadan in secret, and I could not believe I was doing it. I honestly didn't expect to be able to do it. I started doing Ramadan, and that's when the actual belief started to come to me. It stopped being about dunya gains, about myself, and it started being about Allah, because during Ramadan, I was just like focused. I was fasting, I was praying, and between that, I was just learning about Islam. That was all I was doing with my time. So the way Islam made me feel, I was like, this is the truth. Nothing in my life has given me this feeling. And because of that feeling, that's when I started taking it seriously. And I started going, this is from God, because only God can give me that contentment. I've tried so many things in my life to find contentment, to find happiness, and God has given me that with Islam.
What was the thing that intimidated you the most about taking the final step towards becoming a Muslim?
I think it was leaving my old life behind. Like, that was really scary for me, because I knew once I become Muslim, there was no going back to the person I was. The thoughts of how my family would feel, that was really scary. Changing my entire career that I'd worked on for 10 years and lived and slept and ate. Like, my whole life was my career. Like, every decision I ever made was based on working in film, being an actress, all these things that I wanted to do. These were all things that were like really intimidating to me.
How did you feel when you took shahada? Could you please describe that moment in detail for us?
I didn't take shahada in a formal way. I didn't do it in a mosque. I did it during COVID, during lockdown, in my living room. I cried the entire night. It was during Ramadan, the Ramadan that I became Muslim. I cried pretty much the whole time. If I remember rightly, I did it over and over again because I was worried that I was doing it wrong. So I kept doing the shahada over and over again because I couldn't get the words out. And I was crying so much, and I was like, okay, I'd take a breath and then I'd try again, then I'd start crying. So I did my shahada technically multiple times. The feeling was like, it was like I'd found my purpose. It was like my whole life I've always been bouncing between things. I spent my whole life bouncing. I never completed anything. I would start a course at school, I wouldn't finish it. I would start a job, I would quit. My whole life I was just bouncing around. And because I never knew my purpose, I didn't know where I was going, I didn't know why I was here. I was just constantly confused, and that's how I felt for a long time. And I knew in that moment when I took my shahada, I knew that that was it. I could leave that kind of bouncing behind. That when you're a non-Muslim, you have nothing to focus on. Everything's really difficult. Everything's a burden because you don't know why it's happening. You're confused. Where am I going? Why am I here? Why is this happening? Why am I doing this? You just don't know. But then all of a sudden, we're given these set of morals. We're given guidelines to follow. And then the goal becomes clearer. You know where you're going, why you're going there, what you're going to get at the end of it. And that's Jannah, inshallah. And that goal towards Jannah is such an easier life to live than a life of not knowing where you're going. So yeah, it was a very emotional time for me.
You studied acting in Los Angeles and appeared in a number of films. Was it difficult for you to leave your acting career after deciding to become a Muslim?
Yes, it was difficult, something that I worked on for a very long time. I never formally left. Like, I didn't think, oh, today's the day that I leave acting. Because of COVID, because of that, for a long time, there was no film shoots going on, there was no acting. And because of that, Allah gave me time to learn about the religion as much as possible. So I knew what I could and couldn't do. And I was getting offered work again. And I was, for the first time in my life, I was turning it down. I was like, no, I can't do this. Sorry, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I thought, where do I stand on this? Something that I've worked so hard to achieve, where do I stand on this? And then that's when I made the intention to only work on Muslim projects. So I don't have to worry about a director who wants me to hug another man who doesn't understand why I can't hug him. You know, I don't have to worry about those things.
How did your family and the people around you react to your conversation to Islam?
So my mom, when I first converted to Islam, she came up to me with her Google searches of things that she'd Googled. And they were concerns. They were, I guess, genuine concerns, but mostly fake news, conspiracy theories that she'd found. And she was not happy. She used the word terrorist a lot, to be honest. She used to say to me, if you go to a mosque, be careful, someone might recruit you. Like, she genuinely thought there'll be men waiting for me outside that were going to recruit me to be a part of their, I don't know. It's news, you know, it's media, it's what she thought. I lost a lot of friends. There's still a lot of people that don't talk to me. One of my friends messaged me on Facebook and he said, are you doing this for a guy? Are you being intimidated? What's going on? Like, he genuinely thought I was in a scary situation. And my family is just really weird around me because they don't know how to act. They think I've gone crazy. They think I don't know. But I know my family related to me more when I was partying, when I was doing bad things. They could relate to that. But the person I am now, they don't understand. My mum's gotten better with me, to be honest. My mum started learning about Islam. I've taken her to a mosque. I took her to a dawah stand with people who give dawah. And she started learning about Islam more. She's in a much better place than she was before. And that's mostly because Allah's putting good Muslims in her life. She's been meeting people. Recently, she called me and she said, I met this girl in hijab and she helped me with this thing. And she just, anytime like someone who's Muslim helps her, she notices it. She tells me. So there are people out there who, apart from me, who are giving good dawah to her. So that's really helping.
Was it hard for you to wear the hijab?
It was definitely hard because I was that girl that when she went out in the streets, I was that girl that wanted people to look, but also got upset if the wrong person was looking. And I had to leave that behind, which was really, really difficult because a lot of my identity depended on whether people were looking at me or not. And that's really difficult because when I walk down the streets in the UK, it's like I don't exist. I'm completely invisible. And that was, you know, someone who wants to be an actress, someone who dressed in a certain way. Like, that's something that she doesn't want. So it was definitely a big change for me. But I started to revel. I started to enjoy that invisibleness. I started to enjoy walking down the street and actually just walking down the street, not putting on some show. Like, I actually got to enjoy life for the first time without worrying what people were thinking about me. And that's what Islam gave to me.
You started praying before converting to Islam. Can you tell us about your first salah experience?
First prayer I learned was Zuhr, which I don't know why, because Fajr is a lot easier because it's 2 rakat, but I didn't know that. I just typed in how to pray and it came like 4 rakat Zuhr. I didn't know what rakat was. And I was like, let's learn that. So I just picked that video. So I learned how to pray Zuhr first. When I first started learning, I just did the movements and I said like Allahu Akbar and the easy stuff. I couldn't read Arabic. So they had like, I think it's called transliteration on the screen. And it was really difficult to read. Like, it's so over and over again, I'm listening to this kid and I'm like, how does he say that letter? Like, I don't know how to say that. And I was trying to do it. I remember the first time I actually properly prayed Zuhr in my mind, and I was nervous the entire day because I'd been preparing, I've been learning. And when I woke up that morning, I was already nervous because at this time I was like, I'm going to appear in front of God. And I was so scared. Like, it was something that scared me so much. And I remember the time was coming. I was waiting for Zuhr to come. And then before I was like, please remember this. I was so embarrassed to get it wrong. I don't know why I was so embarrassed to get it wrong, but I think I had that fear of getting it wrong in front of Allah and Allah thinking I hadn't tried hard enough. So that was what was going through my mind at the time. And I stood and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to do it yet. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it now. And that went a couple of times. And then eventually I started. And the first time I prayed, all I could see was light, white light. That's all I could see the first time I prayed. And I got everything, I think, right. in the sense that I remember it being correct. I probably did say things wrong, and I was really shocked because I did not think I was going to get it correct. And I remember finishing that prayer, and I was like, wow, I did it. It felt like a performance. It felt like I'd gone up on stage, I'd given a performance, and I'd actually remembered my lines. Like, that's what it felt like.
What was the most difficult challenge you faced after converting to Islam, and what sacrifices did you have to make?
For me, one of the most difficult challenges was confidence in my religion. I would always worry about being around other Muslims because I would think, what if they say an Arabic word to me that I don't know how to respond to? I would think, what if I'm praying in the mosque and I do something wrong? So I was very nervous about being around other Muslims, going to the mosque, going to these places. If someone said assalamu alaikum to me, I'm like, alaikum salam. Like literally, I would freak out because I was so worried I would say something wrong, that people would think I'm a fraud. Like, these were honestly thoughts that would go through my head. When I started wearing hijab out in public, I remember a random brother said assalamu alaikum to me and I just froze. I didn't know what to say. And I thought, oh my God, I'm a fraud. Like, I'm wearing hijab. People think I'm Muslim, but I can't even respond to assalamu alaikum. So these were like really, really big worries for me.
How did you manage to keep your faith? What could be done to prevent this from happening?
I think for me, and I always advocate this, is learning. Constantly growing with your knowledge is what keeps me in the religion, and it keeps me good in the religion. And I think people who convert to Islam, more than ever, they need to be the ones that like keep learning constantly. I think if you stop learning for too long, that's why people leave the religion. I think they spend too much time not learning, not growing, and they just kind of just become stable. And they're like, why am I doing this? And they forget because they haven't been reminded, because they're not actively learning, they're not watching things, they're not reading things. So I recommend doing that.
What do you think a convert needs the most immediately after he or she becomes a Muslim?
A lot of people say community. People say that's very important, finding a community. But I think it depends on the person you are, because for me, that wasn't the most important thing. Like I said, for me, it was always about learning. For some people, community is the biggest thing. So I would recommend finding a community, going out to the masjid, meeting sisters there. And even more than that, maybe joining a revert circle. We have a lot of those in the UK. I'm not sure about Turkey. We have revert circles. So mosques, they hold these revert circles. And it's more about building the community. It's about sisters coming together, helping each other out, giving advice and things like that. So finding community is very important. You can find that online as well. There are plenty of courses online you can join to find community too.
Did you start giving dawah to the people around you?
Yeah, to my mum. Yeah, I try my hardest, inshallah. You know, we do have conversations that kind of get her to somewhere. When it comes to God now, she doesn't say she's atheist. So she doesn't say that she doesn't believe in God. But it took a while to get her there. She doesn't understand God. She thinks force makes more sense to her. So like the force that created that happen. So she's at that place right now. She's told me so many times she doesn't like talking about religion because of her background in Christianity. She was never Christian, but she was brought up in a Christian school. And to her, God was the man that sat on the clouds and watched everyone. Like as a person, like that's how she imagined God, as a person that sits on the clouds, looks down on people. Like that was being brought up in that era. They had a very sort of strange perception of God. And I think because in her childhood, she saw so many pictures of Jesus, you know, got all confused in her mind. And that confusion translates into later life, that she doesn't understand God. She doesn't like the word God. That she says to me, I'm just confused. I don't get it. The force that she believes in, that's God. She hasn't made that connection. It's really difficult for her to make that connection.
Has anyone become Muslim as a result of your influence?
Allahu alam. Allahu alam. I have a lot of Quran orders. I give out free Qurans. I have it on all of my videos. I have like a link to give out free Qurans. I get probably around 10 orders a day at the moment. I get a lot of those orders. So I don't know if anyone's like then becoming Muslim because of that. Regarding messages in my Instagram inbox, I've had a lot of messages of people saying like, oh, I became Muslim because of like this video, but I don't know if they're legit as well, because these are people that I haven't met. There's one girl who I've been in contact on the phone who she definitely became Muslim. So there are people I know of, but the people that I don't know of, I have no idea.
What is the best way to call people to Islam?
I don't think there's a universal best way, because everyone's different. And I think all of us in the Ummah, we're all part of a big jigsaw puzzle. We all play an important part of that. Every single person. Even if you've never made dawah in your entire life, you're still an important part of that puzzle, because our actions are dawah. Everyone says the dawah of actions is the most positive. I believe that. But I think the most effective way is understanding who you are in that puzzle. For every single Muslim to understand who they are in their puzzle. What do they represent? There are some people who do dawah who are very like street and they connect with the street kids, and that's awesome. They're part of that puzzle. There are some people that are more intellectual. They connect on an intellectual level to intellectual people. They're part of that puzzle. Who are you in that puzzle? Like for me, because my background's like self-help, a lot of people who come to Islam through like what I say and what I do, they come from that kind of the girl who was really struggling to find herself, who was constantly looking for all these self-help things to try and find contentment. That's the route that people come to me through.
What impressed you the most about our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
I mean, just like 10 different things came to my mind at the same time. But I think for me, it's about the kindness. And I always think of this one story that always comes to my head. And there's the story of the old lady who was carrying stuff. I think you probably know the story that I'm going to tell. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he helped her carry this stuff. And the entire journey, she was complaining about him. She didn't know who he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was complaining, there's this guy, he calls himself a prophet, he does this, he's awful, he does all these bad things. For ages, he was carrying her stuff for her. Not a single word did he say to her, saying, that's me you're talking about. Don't say those things about me. He didn't defend himself once. He let her ran. And then as he got to her house, he gave her the stuff. Thank you, she said to him. And she was like, so who are you? And he was like, I'm the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she became Muslim in that moment. Because the entire journey, she was complaining about him and he didn't say one thing against her. And I think for me, that's such an important lesson because we get so touchy nowadays, right? If anyone says anything about us. Imagine like someone says something mean about you, you're like, hey, don't say that about me. And like the amount, like he was so humble. He was of such high importance. He was so humble. And thinking about those niceties, the kindness, the charity, teaching others to give to charity, all those things were what impressed me the most, especially when I was non-Muslim learning about him for the first time.
Which day of our Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would you choose if you could watch 24 hours of it?
Wow. I mean, most people, I know what most people would say, but I'm going to be different. I'm going to say the moment Khadija died. Radiyallahu anha. Because for me, I find inspiration in the darkest times, and being in that moment, watching that happen, the entire 24 hours, I know would be enough drive for me to carry on doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life, because I find so much inspiration in the darkest moments. And I know that would have been a very difficult time for him, and watching how he would have reacted and handled that situation, that would be something that would definitely inspire me.
If there was a chance to speak directly to all non-Muslims in the world, what would you like to say?
I would like to say, just stop for a moment and look around and think. That's what I would like to say, because a lot of us, we're on this roller coaster and this roller coaster just doesn't stop. It just keeps going. Shaitan puts us on that roller coaster in a sense that we're constantly busy, we're constantly doing something. We never get the chance to stop, think and look, because someone who knows God, who knows God's attributes, when they look around, they don't just see things, they see miracles. And if anyone takes the time to stop and actually think and look, everyone will come to the same conclusion. This is not just here by mistake. This is here because it's meant to be here, because a being fashioned it. Like they made it the way it is and it's perfect. There are so many things that are so perfect that even if an atom was out of place, that so much damage would be caused. And just to stop and notice that, that's what I would say. I would just say to everyone, just to stop and just take a look and really think and try and understand what it is. Why are you here? What are you doing here? Where are you going? And just to take that time, that's what I would recommend.
Is there anything else you would like to say as a final thought?
We mentioned a lot of dark moments in my life, and a lot of people find God in their dark moments. It's very common. But I think remembering Allah in your high moments, in your good times, is just as important. And that's my final thought, is I really want everyone to really think about God, not just in their dark times, but in their high times as well. Because this is where Allah is neglected the most. The more gifts someone has, the more likely they are to go off the path of Islam. So recognizing when gifts come our way, alhamdulillah, be thankful, but please don't leave Allah. Because this is so common, I'm seeing this all the time. The more gifts that people are getting, the more they're leaving the deen. The people who are going through hardship, they're staying strong in the deen. Like the people that are living in really poor countries, in really poor circumstances, they're happier because they're stronger in their faith. They're happier than these people that are living the luxury lives. That's what I want to say. A lot of us out there who are probably watching this, we're probably sitting in a cushy little home with a roof over our head, with food in our fridge. We're probably in a situation that's better than most of the people in this ummah, right? Be thankful for that. And by being thankful for that, I'm not just saying be like alhamdulillah, of course say alhamdulillah. Be thankful in the sense that you actually want to learn more about the religion. Go out there, try harder, try and do more for charity, try and learn more about the religion, try and watch more good content. Be mindful of what you're watching. And that's my final thoughts.